Hey y'all, Jason here with Dirt Race Life. On the street stock build, I've been super busy the last 2 weeks getting lots of small details done. All of the electrical, the fuel system, got the power steering system completed, all of the ballast bolted on. All of this has to happen to get this car up and ready to get on the track. And this video is a recap, a walk around, show you how I did everything, show you some areas where that I've made some mistakes in the build. So even some uh-ohs in this one. All right, y'all, let's walk around and check it out. So the first thing we're going to cover is all the electrical work. That has been many days of the last 2 weeks was getting all of the electrical done on this car. I'm going to do this video all point of view with camera in hand where that we can do a lot of close-up details. But I will say this, if you see something that you question or you like or don't like or whatever it is, leave me a comment because I guarantee you I'm going to miss things or there might be something I don't cover enough detail. I'm reading those comments. They help me tremendously. But if there's anything that you see that I could do better or how I did something that I'm not explaining, just hit the comments below, y'all. With that, we're going to go to electrical. We're going to start back here with the battery. I did end up putting the battery on the right side of the car. So I want to show you. So you see the frame rail, and I'm sitting right down in here, inside of the frame rail on the right side. I ended up choosing the right side because this is a permanent mount, and I think I needed this no matter what to help offset the weight of me. But I left all the cables long. One of the reasons was that if I was to like taking this car, I sold this car, it moved on to another driver that weighed significantly less. They may want to move this over to the driver's side. So I just went ahead, I had these cables all made. I left them long where that they would reach if it needed to go to the other side. So you can see I put in big L plate, tied it together to the frame on the top and bottom, couple threaded rod bolts, you know, piece of angle iron here. Got this good and snug. Put a bracket in here just to locate, make sure that it can't shift forward against these threaded rods and like break them off or something. Just a little bit of extra safety there. All right, so big cables going here. On the grounds are a little bit smaller, but there are two of them instead of one. One is going directly to the roll cage right there. All right, but the other one, follow it here, it's coming along. It's spliced and tied in. It's tied together to the cage again, the exhaust right there. But it comes up and it's tied directly to the aluminum plate here. You see it's tied directly to the motor mount plate for the back. That's unpainted aluminum, and then the unpainted block is bolted straight to it. So best ground I could come up with is just like that right there. All right. And then you'll see that big 2.0 starter. That's overkill. It doesn't have to be that big. This thing's as big around as a quarter, y'all. But anyway, I already had these, and so you know, you use what you got. And coming around here, and it's the first place it's going is to a big, let me get this where you can see it. First place it's going is to big 600 amp master right there. So that's master cut off. And then you see the solenoid right here that it's going into as well. And then you see a little bit smaller 1.0, I think, that's going to the starter itself. So great big cables, high amperage and everything. So that all works really good. All right. All right, so let's just talk about overall how I'm wiring this car. Here's the big master right here. I've got a big cable coming off here that is made up of several different smaller hot wires. So when you turn the master switch on, I've got a whole group of hot wires here that go hot. I've got 5 circuit breakers lined up across there. Those black boxes right there are circuit breakers. I got a hot wire going into each of the 5 across there. These are all like a 30 and a 20, a 15, a 10, a 5 amp is what these circuit breakers are. Each one's of the tops of these is going to a different item that it runs. So for example, going across here, the MSD box, the MSD ignition switch, the starter relay, the blower motor for the helmet, and the gauges are the 5 across here. And so the top line for each one of those is either going directly to the device or going to a switch. We'll go to the inside of the cockpit and look at that. So let's check it out. All right, so here's how we did it. Here's that big master right here. So when I turn that on, it locks on. I go ahead and I turn my MSD box on. I got a light here that's telling me my MSD box is hot. And then the switch is on the ignition. So I use double pole switches because if the contacts go bad on one side, the contacts on the other are still working. So on either way is the way I do that. And then that's the helmet down there with my low and my high. And the colors is just two different colors, just so I'll know if it's on, what's going on there. All right, and then the 5 relays, well, circuit breakers are right here. Those are all push button resets on the 5 across there. And of course, then here's the starter button as well. All right. So, and I always put the starter and ignition together, where if I need to turn it over and then turn the ignition on, anything like that, that's the way I do it. All right, so y'all see I'm using an MSD 6AL digital box here. Had real good success with this box, and I've got it on the inside of my cockpit here, mounted on the rubber isolators. Then the plug-in right here, I've got a big 3/4 inch piece of heater hose covering all my wires and everything, making sure they don't get cut where they go through the firewall. And then I'm using, you see here that I've got the MSD, this is the E-coil style. I was killing the oil coils, the can coils, I was killing those. And I went to this thing and I have never looked back. This thing right here weighs like 5 or 6 pounds. It weighs a ton. Of course, I've got it as far back as possible. But it's wired up to the MSD box and everything. You see here, of course, the wire's coming in. It's a little bit of a bird's nest up in there. I'm not as good as some on wiring. If y'all want to see some beautiful work, look at Mr. John Keith's Statement Race Cars. Look at his Facebook page and stuff where he's showing pictures of the work they do. Now, that's beautiful work. This is just works work. There's a huge difference here. Anyway, but you see I'm running this, running the cord up through here. And on the gauges, there's the oil sending unit right there running back. Notice these wires are in close proximity to these headers here. I don't want to have a problem, so I put some aluminum shielding tape. This is ductwork tape is what this is. So it's aluminum tape. It's got a sticky back on it, but it's basically like Reynolds wrap is what it is. But some heat shielding there to help protect that. If I run into any problems, I may put a heat shield or something here, but I think that'll be plenty to take care of that. And then you see right here, there's my water temperature gauge as well, running down through here and running back. And let's see, here's where my cords come up and go into, of course, there's my cover right there that's over my upper dashboard. And here are my gauges. Let me turn the power on here. All right, so you see them come on. Now, when I turn my master on, these gauges come on. I don't run them on a separate switch. And the MSD box itself is on when I turn the gauge on, when I turn the master on. And I like that because that always reminds me to cut the master off. Cut the master off, cut the whole car off. I don't have to worry about accidentally having anything that could be running the battery down. Of course, they'll all like change colors and stuff like that. But in order for that color change to stay, I realized this after the fact, I would have to run a hot wire to the battery that the master did not cut off. Because they have a line that has to stay hot all the time for it to remember its color. Every time I turn that master off and back on, that color is always going to go back to blue. So looks like the gauges are always going to be blue. So just something I realized here. I think I would still, yeah, it's changing colors on me and stuff. But anyway, every time I cut it off and back on, these change color. It's fine. You know, yeah, maybe in a future build, I run a small line straight to the battery with like a 1/2 amp fuse or something, possibly. For this build, I'm not going to change anything. So you see my line here for the helmet blower coming in with 2 wires, and I've got enough room here between the spring and my seatbelt mounts and everything. There's a pocket right in here. I'll mount to the deck with the blower for the helmet, and then it'll drop back in right in here. I'll probably put a hole either right here on the top of the deck or right underneath here, wherever's best for that hose to come through in order to run my helmet. And that is the wiring, I think. Okay, we got the power steering hooked up right here, pressure line. This pump right here, this is like the $150 Speedway pump is the one I'm running right here. I've ran this before, didn't have any trouble with it, so we're gonna run it on this car. All right, so here's my high pressure into the pump. Here is my low pressure coming out of the pump, going into my can. Here is my draw line on the bottom, and you see it's running right underneath there back into the pump. And you see that I did what I did, put a mount directly on the firewall right here with it. It's good to go, simple system, out of the way, no issues with that. You see I've got my radiator mounted here. Of course, cardboard's still in it because we've got to put our front bumper on and stuff. I don't want to mess it up while I'm doing that. I'll pull this out before I'm done. Of course, you see I've built the fan shroud. 1/2 inch of fan, you know, in the shroud here. That's the way I like them. It's 1/2, 3/4, sitting about like that much into it is the way I've got it built right here. I'm happy with that. Of course, I got my hoses on, and as you see, the radiator is sitting inside of the steering sector here, sitting way back. And so like that bottom hose right there, I think that hose is only like a 13-inch hose, and this one's like a 20 right here. And of course, that is a double pass radiator because I went with a 24-inch. Of course, you see these are the Show and Field CM2 crossover headers, and I want to show right here 2 separate exhausts out, and I built a tuned Y pipe for this, and I put it on Facebook and I showed it, and I got saved by a couple guys. Shout out to Joe Ham and Justin McCreary and John Keith, and they were all like, hey, you've got a problem. You cannot run a Y pipe in crate racing. And I read the rules, and I'm like, no, I mean, there's nothing in the rules. There's no issue with that whatsoever. But they said, nope, we're telling you from experience, they will disqualify if you tie these two together. I called the crate racing tech. He immediately got back with me, and he said, that's right, we don't allow that. And that brings out a really important point I want to show y'all. Because where is the Y pipe I built? I got this work art right here. Just really beautiful. Love this, and I was going to run this. It does not matter how I think the rules are interpreted. It only matters how the technician interprets the rules. So always keep that in mind. Thank you guys. Y'all saved me on that one right there. That would have been some heartache. What's next? Let's talk about fuel system. Okay, so I've already put 16 gallons into the fuel cell. Here is my line. Of course, I've got my rollover valve in here coming down. I always run these below the tank. My thought process here is if I flip this car completely over on the lid, I don't want to be just depending on the rollover to not be leaking. So I actually will always take and tie onto it, and I always put a filter on this because I want to filter the air coming into the tank. So that's a 3/8 cheap fuel filter. And this thing right here on my other car has got dirt filled in there across there on my other car. All of that dirt would have been in the tank. Something to think about, y'all. So this is big number 10 right here. On the lines, I went with a kit that is the Teflon liner line. That way, if I want to go E85 in the future, anything like that, I'm good to go. Let's see. Shut off. Stainless steel filter, of course, since I'm going to do E85 possibly in the future on the 602. And then I wanted to show right here, this line right here has got their electrical and then the fuel here. And of course, each of them is in their own wrap shielded thing. But this has got the aluminum mastic tape over it. And I've taped it all the way down through here. And the reason for that is because this area right here between these headers, I think this is going to be a real hot box right here. And I'm not running a return line system. And I might potentially run a return line system in the future, but without a return line system, this fuel, especially if the track goes red or there's a long caution or something, and I'm not burning much fuel, this fuel's moving very slowly and it's going to get heat saturated and it can vapor lock. So this aluminum tape right here is going to really help to combat that. All right, so you see runs down through here into the fuel pump right there. That's just a 7.5 pound Pro Comp fuel pump right there into a 4412 2-barrel right here. Like I said, aluminum tape, I have had the engine quit on me in the tech after a race because everything was so heat soaked. It would start boiling the fuel in the lines and the car would quit, and then couldn't start it. Had to wait and let it cool off before it would ever start. And I started taping all my lines like this, and I quit having the problem with that. So it made a difference for me. It's just something to think about. All right, let's talk about ballast next. I went ahead, I had an extra set of clamps, and I went ahead and put them on the front right here. In the future, if I need to tie this car over on a dry slick track, if I need to put a block of weight on this right front to help me get the car to stay over on the right front for some reason, I just went ahead and put these on, and they're basically a reminder for me when I do all this body and everything to make sure that I've got a spot here that I've got good access to, or that I can clamp the weight on. So I just got them there to help me remember. That's why those are there, y'all. I want to make sure I can clamp in this spot right here if I need to. Okay, on the ballast, here's where we're at. I've got a 40 tied right here directly to the frame, and then I've got, that's a 30 and another 25. They're right here, and then you see a 40 right here, a 40 right here. These are, I built square boxes with them drilled through and welded in the back, and then this big box is tied into the frame where I had a lot of surface area where those won't get ripped out for some reason. But this is all, I consider all of this to be the static lid that this car is going to need. I'm not putting it on the scales yet. I know I'm close, but there is a 4-foot section going right here. We want to get all of this done. It's easy to work on, easy to get to. And then I've got a 4-foot section here. I know that's going to add probably another 100 pounds to the car. And so I don't want to put it on the scales and start making decisions about putting ballast on this car. And I don't have this on the car yet because this is coming next. So whatever I skipped over, could have done differently, better, whatever, leave a comment right here. Let me know or ask me, and I will help as much as I can, or I will definitely change on the next build if you've got a better idea for it. Okay, now for the uh-ohs. I mean, it's a one-off. Every time I build a car, it's just new, whatever that frame's telling me. So there's some things that I've realized on this, some stuff I've had to fix, and some stuff I got to live with. Let's go through that. All right, so we definitely were pushing the limits as far as the way we tied this frame into these front towers right here. And I tell you, I was checking these covers, but I was using the cover when I had the engine sitting in, when I was building all this, did not have the valve cover that had the breather caps. And this breather cap right here, of course you see I put new ones on and everything, but I actually took and had to put a little bit of clearance on this tube right here, had to bend it down just a little bit. Now the valve cover itself it's not touching, it's got a gap as far as the tube, you know, up to it, but that rubber on it is sitting against that tube right there. In the future, if I change engines or something, I'll probably get a set of covers that don't have the caps here, that have the center front. Or if I put a 602 in, I'm fine anyway. They're a lot shorter, so no issues there. But yeah, right here, really pushing the boundaries. And of course, you see the cap here with my wires and my clearance right here. And I will tell you, a HEI was in here. HEI does fit and everything. But it's close. I mean, it's close. All right, what's next? Oh, okay, right here. My plate, this is a 3/16 piece of plate steel. And I've got this tied with my big tube coming down right in the middle of where my brakes are. I've got a side brace right here to keep it as far as twisting. But whenever I was getting in here, working this out and bleeding them out, my hydraulic master cylinder right here, when I press on this, of course, this is on a Falcon transmission, and so you're holding it in lower reverse when you push the pedal down. And what I found is that this plate was twisting. And I was twisting this like a spring. And I said, well, over time, what I'll do is I'll warp this whole plate. So I ended up having to put an extra piece in right here, a little bit ugly, but it needed it so that this this clutch pedal right here, when I press it, that doesn't twist up. So you live and you learn there. So my concept here was I wanted to be able to run anything from a 16 to a 20 on this left rear and be able to work by having that really tall jack and having this up here. But I could have done better. On the 20, with the car starting to get it scaled up and everything, I'm way up here right at the top. Not a lot of adjustment. And if I had to do it over, this tube right here needs to be probably an inch even higher. Still would be fine doing a 16, and I think even a 13 inch. I can tell by doing the right side over here, the way it's worked out with a 16, that if I want to run a 13-inch spring, I've got plenty of adjustment to do it. I can already see that. But regardless, a little bit too tight, pushing the limits. And I'll say this, if I'm right on that adjustment when we work this car out, I could switch the spring to an 18-inch instead of a 20 if needed. So it's going to add some cost where I made a mistake, a little bit too low. Another inch would have made a difference right there. The only other major thing that I found on this build that I would definitely do different, I don't like how this tube going to this outside passenger side right here, I don't like how that this turned out. The radius being above, too far above the cage right here for as long of an angle as I've got right here. It just really isn't adding a lot of safety to my cage. And so I'm saying, well, what are you doing here? You know, if you're not adding to the safety and integrity of the cage. Now I went back and I put an upright straight up into my halo right here. And at that point, that solved any safety concerns that I had. That's beefed this up to the point that I'm totally confident in this car in any type of a rollover, you know, collision into the top of it, anything like that. So on the next build though, I wouldn't do it quite like this. I think I would have this radius sitting down further into the cage right here, less of this part, or straight leg in, one of the two. So that's a major change. If this car got a major revision to the top of the halo, I would probably change this up just a little bit. Other than that, if I run into anything else, of course, we're going to show it on the channel. We've got about a week and we need to be at the track. We're in the process of building a bump steer gauge right now and videoing that to show how to build a bump steer gauge and do the bump on this car. I've got to put the rear clip on the car, so it's like 40-inch tubes going in behind the car here for the back deck. Front bumper on, and the nose, and then the body. We're going to do time-lapse video putting all of the body on. And other than that, put it on the track, see what it does. Oh, Mr. J. Neal with Bsb Shocks. I have received my shocks in. We've got 4 matched shocks for this car, for what we described of how we want to drive it and the springs that were on it. Mr. J. Neal came up with what he thought would be a good starting point for us, and I have discussed it with him. We are showing what shocks we're putting on it, what numbers they are, and everything. You're just going to follow along with us on this process as we dial this car in on shocks, and we're just bought 4. We're going to see where we're at, and then possibly we may purchase more shocks as far as for changing conditions on the track and everything. So I'm really excited, looking forward to showing y'all that process as well. So I got a lot of videoing this week to do. Hopefully all this little detailed stuff I've got out of the way where we can focus on getting a lot of this information out to y'all. I really appreciate it. Hit the subscribe button, y'all. More to come.